وأقم الصلاة إن الصلاة تنهى عن الفحشاء
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم
والمنكر.
الحمد لله مولي النعم والشكر له على ما خص منها وعم والصلاة والسلام على النبي الأعظم وعلى آله وأصحابه وأتباعه أشرف الأمم أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Inshallah ta'ala, in this lesson what we're going to do, remember in our previous lessons we've looked into the shurut, which are the conditions of salah, and we divided it to two by trying to cover part one of it and then part two, because we said that the conditions divide to two parts. There's conditions of validity and there are conditions of obligations. However, we started with conditions of obligation, then we looked into conditions of validity. كما يقول صاحب الكتاب العشماوية نفعنا الله به وبعلومه في الدارين آمين رب العالمين. I will repeat them again so that you remember them inshallah, and there's something that I would want to share with you which it's quite necessary for you to learn, because this will build your understanding of fiqh in a different, it will give you a different lens of looking at fiqh. You wouldn't look at fiqh as just a subject where you listen as a podcast, but actually you listen to fiqh as a lesson that you are learning where you would want to take notes inshallah ta'ala. فيقول صاحب الكتاب شروط الصلاة باب شروط الصلاة, the chapter of the conditions of salah. Then he says وَلِلصَّلَاةِ شُرُوطُ وُجُوبٍ. Salah, it has شُرُوطُ وُجُوب, the conditions of obligations, وَشُرُوطُ صِحَّةٍ, and also it has conditions of validity. Now what are the conditions of obligation? Those which oblige you to fulfill an action. مثلا, we say that الشرط or مثلا الشرط نفسه in itself is ما يلزم من عدمه العدم ولا يلزم من وجوده وجود ولا عدم. That which, if it is missing, then the deed that you have to fulfill, it will be invalidated straight away. Meaning to say, مثلا, the time of salah has not entered yet. Now, can we grab the time and have it within our grasp? No, we can't. أليس كذلك? Now, because the time has not entered and you want to pray before the time, then that invalidates your salah. The fact that you prayed out of the time, it makes your salah not to be what? Accepted. Because among the conditions of salah is the entrance of time. وهو ماذا؟ دخول الوقت. It is to have the entrance of the time. So let's look at the شروط وجوب. Now شروط وجوب, the difference from شروط صحة is that شرط وجوب, conditions of obligations. I want you to listen to me carefully. ما تعمر به الذمة ولا يجب على المكلف تحصيله. What does that mean? What it means is that it makes it compulsory upon the mukallaf, the accountable person, to do what? To fulfill an action once they have received the capability of doing what? Of fulfilling the action. مثلا, let's say bulugh, reaching the age of bulugh, and that is hitting the age of puberty. Do you attain it by yourself? By literally, is it within your grasp, or is it something that which is not within your grasp until the time is right, until you reach the age of bulugh, or you see the signs of bulugh? It's until you see the signs of bulugh. أليس كذلك? Now what it does is that the moment you reach the age of bulugh, عمرت الذمة. Your dhimma, your obligations now become compulsory. You have to fulfill it. Different from شروط الصحة. شروط الصحة are those which are in your capacity, your capabilities. You can reach them. فمثلا, for example, طهارة الحدث. طهارة الحدث, what is it? It is to purify yourself from the hadith, lifting the hadith, meaning to say that which bar you from fulfilling your salah. مثلا, in that case, you know that you have the capability, and what should you do? You have to do wudu. أليس كذلك? Because wudu is in your capability at the time, then what do we say is that this is شرط صحة. It's a condition to validate the deed that you have to fulfill. وهو ماذا؟ الصلاة. الفعل ماذا؟ الصلاة. The deed itself is what? Is salah. You have to fulfill salah. أليس كذلك? That should be very clear. So which means that you dissolve, or you make yourself exempt, you remove yourself from the responsibility by fulfilling that shart which is in your capability. But شروط وجوب, it is not in your capability. So those are things that you have to distinguish, because once you distinguish that, it's much easier for you to know which ones work together, which ones do not. وإن كان العلماء اختلفوا على ذلك، بعضهم قالوا أن شروط الوجوب وشروط الصحة لا يجتمعان. And بعضهم قالوا ماذا على حسب التعريفات بعضهم قالوا أنهما يجتمعان. They said that them two شروط وجوب and شروط صحة, they do get, you can combine them by having that certain shurut, they come together, whereas some don't. But this is something which is unnecessary to look into right now, because yes, it is nice to look into it and it is quite important to look into it, but it's not something that you need to do now at the moment. It will be too much for you to swallow of knowledge right now. However, what you want to do right now is to know, how do they come together, how do they not come together, and we're going to look into that. But first we need to count all of the shurut wujub by themselves, and then shurut sihha by themselves, then look into shurut wujubin wa sihha inshallah ta'ala. Okay, فأما شروط وجوبها فخمسة. The shurut of wujub, when it comes to the shurut of salah or conditions of obligation, they are 5. Al-Islamu, they say Islam in this one, however we're going to talk about that. Wal-bulughu, and it is reaching the age of puberty. Al-aqlu, having an intellect. وَدُخُولُ الْوَقْتِ, the entrance of time. وَبُلُوغُ دَعْوَةِ النَّبِيِّ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ, and having the message of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam delivered to the person who will be regarded as responsible once they have received the message. What about shurut sihha? Shurut sihha, they say over here that they are sitta. However, I would not mention all of them because in reality they're not actually sitta, they're not actually 6, whereas the 2 of them that are mentioned last, they are regarded as makruhatus salah. Makruhatus salah. So we're not going to add them here. Although Sahibul Kitab, نفعنا الله بعلمه وكذلك بما كتبه آمين يا رب العالمين, you notice that he added them here as شروط صحة, but we're not going to include them because they're not part of them. As Ibn Ashir says, شرطها شروط الصلاة, يعني مثلا شروط الصحة الاستقبال طهر الحدث وستر العورة وطهر الخبث. They are 4 actually. طهارة الحدث, it is to purify yourself from the hadath, basically lifting the hadath. Second of all, طهارة الخبث, it is to purify yourself from the najasa. وهذه طهارة ماذا؟ طهارة الثوب والبدن والمكان. You have to purify your clothes and also purify your body and purify your area of salah that you are going to pray. And there are discussions in those issues which we don't want to go into at the moment, because saying, for example, مثلا كور عمامة وبعض كم كور العمامة أو بعض الكم, مثلا you have a deep sleeve, or كور العمامة, you have that long the thawb that is coming down of the amama. For example, if it's dragging on the ground like that, do you regard that as najis if it catches any najis? Or maybe مثلا if parts of it have some najasa, picked up some najasa, what do you do in this? هل يعفى أم عليك أن تنظف أو تنضح برش الماء فقط? Those are mas'ala that you don't want to look into right now because it will be too much, as said earlier. Lakin number 3 is istiqbalul qibla, and that is to do what? To face the qibla. And there are 7 types of qiblas that we know according to fiqh, but we don't want to look into that. Just take the qibla that you need to know is the qibla, the qibla that which you follow according to what you have. You might be using an app, or maybe you might be using the qibla of the imam in the masjid. You follow that. You become a muqallid of the qibla, and you don't ask many questions on that, because otherwise it will be extremely difficult. And the one that perhaps you can afford as well is the qiblatul ayn, which is the actual qibla itself when you go to the Kaaba. Because all of us have to do what? We have to face the Kaaba. فَوَلِّ وَجْهَكَ شَطْرَ الْمَسْجِدِ الْحَرَامِ وَحَيْثُمَا كُنْتُمْ فَوَلُّوا وُجُوهَكُمْ شَطْرَهُ كما قال الله تبارك وتعالى. Then وَسَتْرُ الْعَوْرَةِ, and that is to cover your عورة. وقلنا كذلك في مسألة العورة, العورة تنقسم إلى قسمين. عورة, there are 2 types, and we said هناك عورة مخففة وعورة مغلظة. If you go back to the previous classes, inshallah, you shall find these masail explained over there, which we do not want to look into right now because it will take a lot of time. Lakin, what we want to look into is اجتماع الشروط, these shurut coming together, having the awsaf, يجتمع أو تجتمع الأوصاف لهذه الشروط معا. كيف؟ هناك بعض الشروط تجتمع فيها الوصفان، وما هما؟ شروط وجوب، شرط وجوب وشرط صحة. Some conditions have that they combine both the conditions of obligation and at the same time becomes a condition of validity. So for مثلا, We cannot look at Islam, by the way, as a shartu wujub. It's a shartu sihha. It's a condition of validity. It's a condition of validity because the person that literally is not in the fold of Islam, they have made a decision not to be into the fold of Islam unless the da'wah of the Messenger ﷺ has not reached them. But once the da'wah has reached them and they know that this is the truth and they decide to turn away from it, that is different. You cannot really say that if this is a shartu wujub until a person enters Islam and they are going to be those whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives them the guidance alone. Lakin guidance also needs to be followed by action for one to literally decide to follow the guidance. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us all. So when we look at shurutu wujub and shurutu sihha, what do we find? We find that shartu wujubin wa sihha, these types of shurut, they come together and they are, number one, qat'ul hayd wa nifas, and that is the stopping of hayd, menses, or nifas, postnatal bleeding. Now, this is something that I want to bring to your attention as well. When we say that coming to an end of the hayd or maybe nifas, and hayd it is menses, and then nifas we call it what? We call it postnatal bleeding after giving birth. There's something called al-mani' and there's something called as-sabab. This seems quite technical, but I want you to pay attention. Until you pay attention, you'll come to understand inshallah ta'ala. هناك شرط وهناك مانع وهناك سبب. We have three types of these issues which we have to look into inshallah ta'ala, that literally builds your understanding of fiqh to a very different level. How? الشرط, we said, الشرط ما يلزم من عدمه العدم ولا يلزم من وجوده وجود ولا عدم. Shart is that by it not being available, it invalidates the deed that you want to fulfill immediately. Basically, المعدوم شرعا كالمعدوم حسا. That which the Sharia does not consider, then it is not considered as well حسا. Well, physically, mentally, whether emotionally, we cannot consider it as well because the Sharia does not put it into consideration. So you cannot pray out of the time. You cannot pray without wudu. You cannot pray with najasa. Think of that. But then you have al-mani', that which is the barrier to an action. ما يلزم من وجوده العدم ولا يلزم من عدمه وجود ولا عدم. What does that mean? It means that while it is available, while you have that with you, then immediately your salah or maybe your deed is not considered anymore. An example can be like what? The moment a woman experiences her menses, that they have come to her, immediately her salah is regarded as invalid. And there's another discussion there. Basically, she cannot pray. Her salah, if she prays after that, is not considered until she is clean from menses, until she takes the actual ritual bath, and that is al-hadath al-akbar, and then she lifts it. She lifts the barrier of al-hadath al-akbar, the major hadath, the major impurity that she needs to clear herself from. Now you realize this, al-mani' is that which bars you, becomes a barrier towards a deed. Because once you have it, then there's no way you can escape it. You have to wait until it does what? It goes away. Now this is something which we regard as what? Shartu wujub and shartu sihha, a condition of obligation and a condition of validity at the same time. At the time when you have it, you are obliged to follow because there's nothing you can do with your body, sah? Like in the moment it clears off, you're still regarded as a person who is in a state of menses until you lift that barrier from yourself, then you go back to a state of salah. So it is in your capability after that, inshaAllah ta'ala. So you remember that. Number two, bulugh da'wah. Bulugh da'wah, it is receiving the message of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. It's regarded as a condition of obligation and a condition of validity. Why so? It's because some people have the means to receive the message, some people don't. كيف من يعيش في شاهق الجبال. A person that literally lives at the very top, at the peak of a mountain. People like that, there's a discussion on that as well. Are they regarded as people that can be exempt, or people that have to go look for the da'wah? People that have not received, they don't have technology where they don't have connection to the internet, they cannot go online and learn about Islam and all of that. What happens to them as well? So those are discussions that the ulama have as well. But what you notice that بلوغ الدعوة is شرط وجوب and شرط صحة at the same time. What do we mean by شرط وجوب? Condition of obligation. And شرط صحة, condition of validity. A condition that validates your deed, which is within your capability, within your capacity, within your means. Condition of wujub, what is it? Condition of obligation is that which is not within your capabilities, not within your capacity, not within your means, but the moment you get it, immediately you deal with it. You have to make sure that you do what? You make sure you fulfill that shart in order for you to be able to fulfill the main deed itself. Al-mashrut. And al-mashrut is that which you have to fulfill, and that is the salah itself, or maybe any other deed. We said that because even siyam has its own shurut. Hajj has its own shurut. Zakat has its own shurut. And the rest of the of masail fiqhiyya, they have their own shurut. You have to know that. And this means once you build your understanding now about shurut, you can use this later on in any other mas'ala that you will be discussing, or maybe any other bab, any other chapter of fiqh that you will be discussing, inshaAllah ta'ala, as you move along, bi'idhnillah. It's really necessary. You're a student of knowledge, mathalan, bi'idhnillah al-kareem. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make you one. And if you are, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant you the ability to still carry on the path, and also give you the strength to maintain your path of knowledge بإذن الله الكريم. آمين يا رب العالمين. قل من يفهم قيمة العلم في هذه الأيام. Little do they know about the importance and also the thaman, the value of ilm to the majority out there. So let's carry on and mention some, and also I'm not going to mention all of them, but I'm going to mention two more بإذن الله الكريم, and that is دخول الوقت, and it is the entrance of time, because the moment the time enters, it becomes a شرط صحة, isn't it? But the time it goes out, it becomes a shart wujub. Shart wujub, it becomes a condition of obligation. It's not within your means. But the moment time enters, now it is within your means. You have to fulfill the salah. أليس كذلك? And al-aqlu, and that is what? Intellect, sanity, someone when they're sane. When you are sane, then you understand what you're doing. But when you are not sane, then that means you have to wait until حتى يفيق, until your mind comes back again. Once your mind comes back, because that is not within your capability anymore. It's out of your dhimma. You are exempt from that. You are not literally held accountable for not having your mind. You have lost your sanity. Ma'adh Allah ala dhalik. Lakin وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. Lakin notice, once that happens, what do? You try to, you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For those around you, they do that for you, and then until you recover, and become sane again, inshaAllah ta'ala, then that's when you are responsible to fulfill your deeds from then. And even scholars have spoken about a person that literally just, they have had the sanity return once again, and they have recovered from what they were suffering from, and maybe it can be dementia, it can be any other illness, and we can see that today. The level of stress are very high. Even younger people nowadays, they're suffering from this. When I was with a doctor once, a doctor told me that, subhanallah, majority of the people that are literally suffering from stress, very high stress rates, and also dementia, and also mental issues, you find that the majority of them are the youth, basically young people. They're not even at the age of 30 yet. And that is quite sad, actually. And it's something that fiqh has spoken about extensively, to ensure that a Muslim that is praying, that how they are capable of fulfilling their deeds. So for mathalan, once you recover from the problem that you have been facing, a mental illness, then what type of salah do you fulfill? Do you fulfill the salahs that you've missed, or do you not fulfill those salah? Do you fulfill the current salah? Do you fulfill the salah that was before the current salah? All of those issues, inshaAllah ta'ala. So we don't need to cover those now. We need to cover this, which is important, that we see over here. So these which I will give you right now, you understand clearly that these are known as shurutu wujubin wa sihha. They are conditions of obligations and validity. They take al-wasfan, the two attributes, al-wujub wa sihha. Al-wasfan, al-wujub wa sihha. Remember that always. Don't forget that, inshaAllah ta'ala. That should be very easy, bi'idhnillah al-kareem. Once we've covered that, bi'idhnillah, then now, because you've understood all of this, and we've covered the most important parts of the the entrance to Salah, basically the prerequisites to Salah. In the next lesson, bi'idhnillahi al-kareem, we're going to mainly focus on fara'idu salati wa sunaniha wa fada'iliha. We're going to focus on the obligations of Salah and the sunan of Salah, and also the fada'il, the meritorious deeds of Salah, according to what Sahibul Kitab yu'allimuna bi'idhnillahi al-kareem. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant you ease in your affairs, grant you goodness in everything that you do, and open the doors of understanding for you and your deen. And inshaAllah ta'ala, for the little that we provided at the moment, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put barakah in it and allow you to understand the ma'lumah more than how it was delivered, inshaAllah ta'ala. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.